Hey everybody, the Bang is here, and welcome to my end of year Let's Play review for 2021. Over the past couple years, I used to do like tier lists of games that I have done like since 2019 and 2020. And around like 2019, which includes DLCs, I've done around close to 20 playthroughs. And in 2020, I did around 26. Here in 2021, I actually did pretty much 50 playthroughs. I kid you not, 50 playthroughs. Now keep in mind, this is not exactly 50 playthroughs I've completed. It's 50 playthroughs that I've done. Now, certain projects, because they're part of a compilation of a game, like for example, Bowser's Fury goes in with Super Mario 3D World, and Final Fantasy X-2, the last mission, goes, of course, with Final Fantasy X-2. I don't really count them as anything extra, because they're just little side games. They need to be, like, put in with their main game. So keep in mind, this is, like, my point of view, my opinion on each of these games. You might have different opinions, of course. Like, you might say, oh, this should have gone here, or this should have been higher, or this should have been lower. Well, then that's your list. This is mine. I will definitely, like, be as subjective as I can, for the most part, going over my experiences with those Let's Plays from beginning to end for, summarize them, so to speak. And if you have any ideas, like, what you think about it, like, where would you grade them, let me know in the comments anyway. But anyway, let's get started. So I tried to sort these in alphabetical order. I had like some games already put in a list, and then I had to re-add certain pictures. Therefore they got out of order, so I had to manually alphabetize them. But anyway, let's get started. So the first game is Elysia Dragoon for the Sega Genesis. And this was a Let's Play that I remember because I actually did it this month. I would say I would give this one a B. Because, it's very short and sweet. It is like a Sega Genesis action-adventure. Like, you can just clear through enemies pretty fast, even though, like, you can get hit a lot. There were definitely some difficulty spikes, like, in the second half of the game. But I felt the music and the environments were pretty good. I actually liked playing it for, like, the 2 episodes that I did. So would I recommend this? Pretty much. Alundra 2, however, I would not recommend. I would give that a straight D, 100%. Because, like, here's why I'm not giving this an F. The game itself, if you did not call it, like, off the Alundra series, would not have been that bad. Like, it would have been pretty mid. Like, some of the gameplay mechanics were a bit stiff and wonky, and the cutscenes were, like, kind of funny in their own right. But the gameplay itself, and like constantly having to backtrack through like certain parts, unless you solve the puzzles, were pretty annoying. It was definitely nothing like Alundra 1. I was very disappointed with Alundra 2. I wanted to like it, but I couldn't just like it at all. But I didn't hate it, so that's why it's a D. Alright, so this is the first game that out of the 2020 Christmas special, in alphabetical order, is Ape Escape for the PlayStation. And I would give it a B. I'm also going to give that a B because, like, it was a pretty good game, but I found that backtracking got pretty annoying, especially since in Ape Escape games, they force you out of the level rather than ask, oh, do you want to continue, like, capturing more monkeys? Especially since you might have the right gadgets for it anyway. Sure, I would like to do that. But the game forces you out because you gotta go through all the levels, then you gotta get the gadgets. But the actual gameplay was pretty good, and I really did like the environments. Like the whole thing about, oh, let's just go through like certain time periods. And you do get to see different kinds of environments because of it too, which I thought was pretty nice. Ape Escape 2, I would also give it a B. And it has nothing to do with it being the PAL version, which doesn't have, like, the English characters' names, or, like, 60 frames per second. But I felt like it was just more of Ape Escape 1. Like, if you played Ape Escape 1, you were definitely familiar with Ape Escape 2. In fact, you couldn't... Maybe you wouldn't even bother to do the tutorials, because a lot of the gadgets were the same. But I did like how it looked. Like, it was an absolute glow-up from the graphics of Ape Escape 1. So I absolutely liked it. Atelier Iris Eternal Mana. Oh boy, I really wanted to like that game a lot more, especially around the first half, and just learning, like, how it worked. But I think with the difficulty spike midway, I'm gonna have to give it a C. Like, and here's why I give it a C. Like, the gameplay itself was pretty okay. Like, you standard RPG, JRPG fare, you had your side quests, of course you had item management, of course you were creating items that, of course, you know, either benefit you or destroy your enemies. The problem is, like, the main characters, save for a couple, I didn't really care for. Klain was just a very generic, goody hero, and Lita, even though she was very important, kind of had like a bit of a bratty side as well, especially when she gets jealous. So I couldn't really like either of them. I mean, Delsis was pretty cool, as was Arlen. Like, they were alright characters. But the difficulty spike second half of the game, it really punishes you if you're not using your mana stones to buff up certain weapons and armor. If you're not doing that, you're in deep trouble. And here's the other thing that made it, like, kinda aggravating for me. Klain is the one that's able to revive characters when they fall. If Klain falls, you got nobody to revive them. That's it. You are absolutely boned. But I think there was a side quest that allows you to, after you complete like a large amount of side quests in a storyline with a certain character, you might be able to buy items that will allow you to revive people. And because you have to go through that much trouble just to get a revive item, which is usually pretty standard fare in JRPGs like in Final Fantasy, where Phoenix Downs can be available pretty much at the beginning, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth. I'm sorry, like, I could not rate this any higher than a C, in my opinion. Alright, Axiom Verge 2, I did play this off the PS4, and I really liked it, so I'm gonna give it an A. A part of me was like, I kinda liked Axiom Verge 1 more, but I think it was just I missed the guns. Like, the actual environment in Axiom Verge 2, I ended up liking more than Verge 1. Like, it was an alright story. Like, it was... Sometimes the story is kind of hard to follow. For me, I'm more interested in the gameplay mechanics. And what they introduced in this game compared to its predecessor, I think they did a really good job. If there will be an Axiom Verge 3, I would love to play it. Barbie Explorer. A lot of you are thinking I'm going to give this an F. It's a D. I'm going to give Barbie a D. That's going to be taken out of context. But here's why I'm going to give it a D. It's plain and simple. The whole premise of, like, going from beginning to end, jumping through certain obstacles, solving certain puzzles, just to get to the end of the level, I like that premise. Barbie Explorer just felt like if Crash Bandicoot and Tomb Raider had a child, and that child was dropped on its head like 30,000 times. Because the controls for this were pretty jank. And it was kind of hard for me to get into it because you kept dying so much, and you have a finite amount of lives. Which, to be fair, was my fault for playing it on hard mode, which gives you only 10 lives. I think in normal you get like 15 or 20 lives, and easy it's way more than that. So maybe I should have just played it on normal, and I would have less of a frustration with it. But I did like some of the design ideas with like how they did boss battles. Because they weren't really battles, it was just survive certain traps. So let's move on. Bionic Commando, I'm gonna give it a B. And the thing is, like, I thought I was gonna do worse than Bionic Commando because you can't jump in that game. You had to use your hook and swing it back and forth to reach certain areas, or you climb up to certain places. Sometimes you use the hook defensively while you shoot. I thought it was actually a pretty good game. I've heard people say the Game Boy version is slightly better, but I wanted to try the NES one because that's the one I played first. And I will say, like, Capcom did a good job with that. There are other Bionic Commando games. I did get them on Steam. I don't know when I'm going to play them. If I do, I might consider Let's Playing them. Who knows? Alright, Bloodborne was also in the 2020 Christmas special. And I guess I should mention that Atelier Iris Eternal Mana also is in that. This one is an A as well. I know Bloodborne got me upset in certain parts, especially with the Forbidden Woods. I hate that god-awful place. But I really like the challenge of Bloodborne. It felt weird not having a shield, like, not regularly. I mean, Bloodborne does have a shield, but it's a sub-weapon rather than a defensive one. But using the gun to be able to parry certain enemies and then just go for visceral attacks, I really like that function. I had a lot of fun just exploiting certain weak spots in enemies. And then, you know, just getting through, like, the battles, especially with the music during boss battles, was a lot of fun. I really like the challenge of Bloodborne, in my opinion. Alright, Captain America and the Avengers. This is the arcade edition. I'm gonna give it a B. Because, like, it's a simple beat 'em up for the arcades. Like, that's just the norm. And at least you're able to continue where you left off if you died. And you can enter credits to keep boosting your health, so you're not really getting a game over. Very simple to the point. You know, you're just standard beat 'em up fare. At least you get to play as all the Avengers in this one. Unlike my next game that I'll talk about later. And it's 2-player co-op. So if you got a friend, if you want to, like, play on an arcade cabinet or MAME, which will likely be the more suitable choice, go get yourself a friend and try it out. Alright, now we get to Captain America and the Avengers for the NES, and that is a D. What a massive difference between the arcade version and the NES version, simply because the NES version was a side-scrolling platformer, which the platforming part is not bad. It's sometimes the boss battles get absolutely atrocious if you haven't leveled up your characters, or if you're just taking too many hits. Like, I found the Mandarin fight near the end was pretty frustrating, especially if you're using Hawkeye, even though Hawkeye is the greatest chance of hitting him. And of course, the final boss can pretty much rinse you if you don't know to use Captain America's down shield attack. And I did run into a moment where I dashed into a force field near the end of the stage and that kills you. And then if you die, your Avenger gets captured. Then you have to hope to find an item that rescues that Avenger. That Avenger has to go all the way through all the levels that they already did just to reunite with the other Avenger, which is very, very frustrating. So, like, if you die once, you might as well just rewind back where you left off and just start over, because you're gonna have a terrible time. Alright, Cuphead. Like, the original Cuphead, of course, not the DLC, because that doesn't come out till June 2022. I will also give that an A. I really like the challenge of Cuphead. And the reason why I was able to get through Cuphead pretty well on my Let's Play was because I streamed it a couple years prior. So I knew what to expect for the most part. Even though there were a couple bosses that were pretty much rinsing me, like the Bee. I was not a fan of that boss. But I really like the music. I love the graphics. The story was pretty catchy. I was on my toes the whole time. But I felt like I understood the mechanics of Cuphead enough that I was able to get through just fine. Only dying like well over 50 times in total. Which, you know, might seem like a lot. But there are people that have probably died hundreds of times because the game it's challenging. I'm not going to dispute that at all. Will I play the DLC in 2022? If the price is good, sure, why not? Darksiders! I did the Definitive Edition for the PS4, which thankfully had no bugs, because I think the Steam version did. I will also give it a C, because, like, it was a fun game, but I felt like some of the story and at least the atmosphere just felt kind of generic, in my opinion. The combat was good, but it also was pretty tricky just to avoid getting hurt. And if you don't have the best armor in the game, you're gonna get hurt a lot. Just to forewarn you. And some of the dungeons and dungeon puzzles were, like, some of them were pretty clever, and others were just absolutely painful. Like, I can tell you, I've had a lot of salty moments going through some puzzles in the Black Throne. If you got the patience of Job, you'll get through this game, no problem. Alright, Doom, the 2016 edition, which I will also give an A. I really like Doom 2016. This was a game that came up in the 2020 Christmas special as well. And I did get this game from somebody that was just selling it secondhand. I think I got this and Far Cry 4 and the BioShock collection. Like, those 3 PS4 games for like $60. And I will say that was a pretty good deal for a game as good as Doom 2016. Like, it's very straight to the point, like, you know, your standard Doom fare, but of course there's, like, more platforming compared to, like, the classic Doom games, especially since you can jump. And there were some very interesting combat rooms, some challenges, the story was pretty intense, which I'm sure we'll get to see more of it in Doom Eternal later on in 2022, which will be part of the 2021 Christmas special as a bonus game. So would I recommend Doom 2016? Absolutely. If you're looking to play it online, just play Doom Eternal instead. Alright, Do Re Mi Fantasy. This one I'm gonna give a B. And I will say this, like, the game itself, too bad it never made it to North America, unless you were playing it off the Wii eShop or something. Which is a shame, because that's the only way you would have been able to get it. So I don't think the Wii shop is open anymore. Yeah, that closed down quite a while, I think. But if you got a chance to play this game, I hope you enjoyed it. This game was a lot of fun. Also, I just got a gift on Steam. I'm just going to close that down. I don't know if that got captured. It probably didn't show up in the window. Like, I only got it captured in the browser, not everything else. I was gifted something on Steam for Christmas. Awesome. I think it was a Crystal K's HD collection, yeah. Thank you for that. So back to my point, before I was interrupted. The game itself is pretty good. Like, even though this is like connected to Milon's Secret Adventure, or Milon's Secret Castle, I mean to say, for the NES and the Game Boy, it doesn't play exactly the same way. Like, yes, you use bubbles offensively, but you're not in a castle with its own rooms and dungeons. Like, you got an overworld, you're going from point A to point B, you just find stars to power up your instruments, which are needed to actually get to the end of the game. And some of the bosses were, like, funny looking. Because, you know, for a game made in Japan, of course they're going to be very cutesy and pretty clever with their designs. And the music and the backdrops were good, too. Dual Hearts. This was a game that came up in the randomizer, and I'm going to give it a C. Dual Hearts is what some people would call Unlunger 3. And even though it was an alright game, it suffered in sales mostly because it came out around the same time as Kingdom Hearts. Which can feel like the kiss of death, in my opinion. I felt the game was okay, but that's all it was, okay. I couldn't really get into the main character at all because he was just a bit of a dick. But I think the worst part of it is that the game just kept rubbing it in your face that he's a dick over and over again. Like, I get it. Yeah, he cares about treasure and doesn't really like his partner that much. I get it. You're driving it home a bit too much. And some of the collectibles, there's a lot of them in the game. It's like an action-adventure 3D platformer, and there's a lot of collecting to do. And some of the rewards, like, for getting them are pretty good. Like, the story was good. But I think the gameplay, especially, like, getting through, like, a whole bunch of collectibles, I don't know. And the end reward wasn't worth it. That's why I never bothered to 100% the game. Earthworm Jim 3D. That is a straight F right there. That's our first F of the video. Because let me tell you, this was the only playthrough that of a main game that I never finished. Because the game was that offensively bad. Like, I've played through Earthworm Jims 1 and 2, those games are hard, but they're not terrible. Earthworm Jim 3D, however, is terrible. And I think it might be also my fault because I played it emulated on the N64, which runs certain things at the wrong speed, especially for boss battles. But the idea that you needed to get everything in the boss battle, like 100% of the collectibles, and you had to make sure that you didn't die doing so. It was so bad. That is a terrible idea, even if you fix the speed. Honestly, if by divine intervention I get back to this game, Earthworm Jim 3D, I'm just gonna play it on PC. Because I think that's where the game is meant to be played. Alright, moving on. Xanadu for the NES. I'm gonna give it a C. Like, I did like the game, but I felt like movement got a little slow. It's so easy to get beat up in this game. Like, I felt like your character movement can be a bit stiff. And the combat can be pretty frustrating, especially if you're trying to get up close and personal to enemies that can shoot at you. But it's not a bad game. It does have, like, standard go from point A to point B, and then maybe go back to point A if you solve certain puzzles, even if it means you have to buy keys over and over. And you have to make sure that you buy the right amount of keys, because otherwise you will be stuck with them forever. There is no option to throw things away in this game. So you have to use them, or they are stuck in your inventory, and thus hamstringing you the rest of the way. Plus, if you level up too much, sure you will start with more money after you die, but certain items like the wing boots actually have less effectiveness if you're at a really high level. And I learned that the hard way when I was going through the final dungeon and just barely made the shortcut right at the last second. But it is a pretty good game. Like, not a great game, but a good game. Final Fantasy X-2? I did this off the PS4 HD remaster, and honestly, I'm gonna give it a B. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. Like, yeah, the story is kinda weird compared to, like, Final Fantasy X, and I wasn't a fan of, like, the gameplay mechanics. Like, sure, the dress sphere mechanic was pretty fun, for the most part, like, being able to customize jobs. But I feel like you end up too weak unless you're using specific jobs. Like, for instance, if you're using, like, Dark Knights, you'll be able to plow your way through a lot of battles. But any other job just feels weak, in my opinion. So, I kind of preferred it, like, if it kept the Final Fantasy X battle mechanics where it was just turn-based rather than, like, you know, active time. But I think that's just because, like, my brain couldn't process, like, all the things I needed to take into account, like maybe switch jobs in the middle of the battle, which was pretty annoying as well. And I did do the last mission as well. I'm not really grading it as part of it, because it was like, you know, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, that kind of style. That game mode wasn't too bad. Like, I like that part, even though getting confusion is the kiss of death, and you'll end up throwing away all your good dress spheres, and then you'll just die a painful death. Just to forewarn you, if you're doing the last mission, make sure you're either resistant or immune to confusion. Alright, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Technically, I did not do the whole game. I only did one story, and that was Blue Lions. That, to me, was definitely an S. Like, the one story that I played, well, I guess I did the DLC story as well. That's why the Let's Play was over 90 parts. But what I did, I really, really liked. It was just, like, a great story, in my opinion, and my viewers actually voted for Blue Lions. Second place was Golden Deer, though, which I was kind of surprised. I thought Black Eagles would be second place. But would I ever play this again? Probably sometime in the future. And if I do, I'll definitely play Golden Deer. Just to give it a try. Like, I just felt like the story of Blue Lions, especially like Dimitri's redemption arc, was done pretty well. Well, except for a part where I felt like he was just all brooding and like vicious the whole time for like during the time skip. And then after one cutscene, he just like totally redeemed. Like, I felt like his redemption, like going from like dark to good again, it might have been a bit rushed. But I did like the story as a whole, from beginning to end. So I would definitely recommend it. If you're going to play this for the first time, definitely try Blue Lions if you like a really good story. Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1 is definitely the opposite of good. I would give this also an F. It's slightly better than Earthworm Jim 3D, in my opinion. So I'm gonna put this right here. It's higher than Earthworm Jim 3D. But it's just one of those typical JRPGs from, you know, Idea Factory, which, you know, just pumped out. The story is just weird. It's very, you know, fan servicey. There's like a bit of lewdness to it. Of course it's anime. Of course it's for weebs and that kind of thing. But overall, outside of that, the gameplay is just really grindy. Like, it just felt like you're going from point A to point B. And that's it. You just go to the beginning, you go to the end, you go through your cutscenes, some of which may or may not be voiced, and you might do a boss battle, and then you leave. It's just Quest 64 format, so to speak, where it's just a hallway. Maybe not more open than a hallway, but it's just... there's nothing special with any of the dungeons at all. The side quests are just the same shit, where it's kill this many enemies, pick up that many items. And that's it! That's it! Nothing special! At all! I would not recommend this at all, in my opinion. Like, maybe if you like the cutesy kind of stuff of, like, the Hyperdimension Neptunia series, go for it. If you're looking for, like, decent gameplay that's, like, fun, I would say no. Definitely no, in my opinion. Anyway, Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse is also a bad game. I would give this an F. And the reason why I would definitely give this an F, I was going in through high expectations that it's just going to be like a 3D platformer Mickey Mouse game. Because we have like the Magical Quest games, of course we have Mickey Mania. And well, it was like going to be a pretty good game coming out for the GameCube, and it was just a point-and-click game. This is a game that should have been on PC, not on a console. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Magical Poppin', weirdly enough, was also in the 2020 Christmas special, and I would also give it a B. Because it's very simplistic, there's only like 6 levels, but as you're going through the levels, you're getting more abilities and stuff. And those spells will actually help you get through the stage and future other stages. It does have this weird thing where Select is your mega attack for a spell, which you would never think to use Select. The platforming is pretty fun, the music is pretty good too, the levels are well designed, as are the boss battles. This is not a super hard game to get into. And depending on how well you are in exploring and finding items, you can make yourself pretty strong by getting a bunch of health upgrades. And somebody said there was a Metroidvania. It's not a Metroidvania. Like, I don't know why they came up with that idea that it'd be a Metroidvania, even though it's just, oh, you get new abilities, you go back, but you're not going back. It's level structured. So you do get more abilities, but it's not a Metroidvania. Let's get that right. but it is a good game. Definitely try it. If you can find an English patch, of course, which there are some online. Alright, Magical Quest 3 starring Mickey and Donald. This is for the Super Nintendo, and I found like an English patch because it was not released in North America until the Game Boy Advance. I would also give it a B, because, you know, I did play the other Magical Quest games. I really liked them. It was a little bit on the tougher side, but it was still, like, pretty balanced, you know, your standard Mickey Mouse fare. If you play through the other Magical Quest games, you'll get through this one just fine. Mario Saves Christmas. I think I'm also gonna give it a B. Like, it was a standard Mario hack. You can get it done in, like, maybe less than an hour of gameplay. It's just, like, a bunch of, like, icy levels for the most part because it's, like, Christmas themed. But it's not bad. Pretty short hack. You're not gonna get a lot out of it if you're used to playing hacks that have full-on worlds. And the story just feels kind of, like, meh. But that's what most hacks are anyway. Alright, MC Kids. This is the NES version. I'm gonna give it a C. And the thing is, I did like the game more than I thought I would. For, like, a licensed game based on, you know, McDonald's, it's very high rent, in my opinion. Like, you get to play as 2 different characters, which is pretty cool. You go look for cards inside different platforming stages. Some of them can be pretty tricky, and others are pretty easy. And you have, like, certain abilities, like you'd be able to run past, like, a certain wheel that makes you move upside down. And sometimes you'll just take a boat and you can ride on water. And for a game like that, but they have so many different kinds of physics and different kinds of, like, mechanics in the game, that's actually really good. It was better than, like I said, better than I thought it would be. Alright, Mega Man Legends 2. I'm gonna give this one an A. I did play Mega Man Legends a couple years ago from another Christmas special, and I did like it. And this one I liked a little bit more. I felt the story, especially around the end of Mega Man Legends 2, felt kind of samey for the most part, because of course, you know, you had this major important being that wants to, like, destroy all life forms, and Mega Man's like, oh, I gotta do this again, going through Juno in the first game, and now you're just going through, what's her called? Sarah? I think it was Sarah in the second game. But the gameplay for Legends 2 is very similar to Legends 1. So if you play through Legends 1, you'll definitely get through Legends 2. No problem. And I felt like just moving around in the game because you had a ship to fly around made it interesting as well. Alright, Mega Man Network Transmission for the GameCube. I'm gonna give it a B. And the thing is, I played through all the Mega Man Battle Network games 1 through 6. Network Transmission is very different. It's a side game that goes on the story between Mega Man Battle Networks 1 and 2. So of course it's just after beating the Life Virus, and before the Rise of Gospel. So what it is, it's a side-scrolling platformer, but you actually use your chips, and depending on, like, how many chips you get of that certain type, you can use them a lot. Like, maybe up to 30 times. And if they're really powerful, maybe around 10, or in some cases 5. So it definitely pays to grind and try to collect as many chips as possible so you can go through the levels a lot easier. And it does reward exploration as well. Like, some of the boss battles, they can destroy you if you're unprepared. Excuse me. But if you use the right chips, especially against Fireman, which is the first boss, you can take it out in seconds. And that's the crazy thing about that game, is that boss battles can either destroy you in seconds, or you destroy them in seconds. There's, like, no in-between. Alright, Mega Man ZX. I did this off the Zero ZX collection, off my PS4. I'm gonna give it a C. Mega Man ZX, like, if you play Mega Man Zero, you can get used to ZX. Even though they're not really, like, mission-based or, like, level designed, they're rather just, like, one connected world. If you're playing through Mega Man ZX or ZX Advent, you're gonna have a rough time in the beginning because you are very, very weak in the beginning. Now, once you, like, get later on, you get more abilities, obviously you're gonna be much more confident in your potential, you're gonna get stronger, you can tank a lot of hits, you can heal a lot of HP, which of course you can't do in the beginning of the game because now you gotta deal with boss battles that are tough, can kill you in maybe 3 or 4 hits, and you have a smaller screen, which makes it much more painful to get through. So, good luck to you if you're playing ZX or ZX Advent. They are good games, the stories are incredible, but the screen crunch is really going to make things tough for you. And keep in mind, if you're going to play ZX, have fun with a side quest that gets you a sub-tank, because you're doing a lot, and I mean a lot of back and forth to 2 different areas. Just to forewarn ya. Alright, Phantasy Star 3 for the Sega Genesis. And that game is a straight D. I can honestly say I was very disappointed with Phantasy Star 3. Like, it was a different team from the first 2 Phantasy Star games, and it really shows. The music is okay, even though the battle music can get really grating after a while. The story is really good. And I do like that you can have replay value of, you go through 3 different generations. Like, you get through the end of the first generation, you got choice A and choice B. Choice A will get you choices C and D, while choice B will get you choices E and F. So there's 4 different ways to end the game. The issue is there's only 2 save files. So you might have to, like, play through certain parts of the game over from the beginning, or at least, like, till the end of Gen 1. And that's very annoying. If it had, like, 3 save files, you'd probably be more incentivized to go for all the endings. But for me, I only just did 1. The gameplay just felt very bland and generic, in my opinion. And while the story was good, going from point A to point B, navigating through the world, it just felt like pulling teeth out of my ass. I'm not even kidding. That is the perfect metaphor for going through parts of the world in Phantasy Star 3 until you get, fast transportation at the end of the game, pretty much. They wait till the 3rd generation to even give you a faster way to get around the world. That is grating. I really did not like that. And I wanted to like the game more, and sadly I couldn't. At least Phantasy Star 4 was a massive improvement. Definitely play Phantasy Star 4. Pink Panther and the Pinkadelic Pursuit. I will also give this a D. Because, it was a very wonky game for the most part, because you're just going through, like, parts of the world, or parts of a level, complete this objective, get chased constantly when you're getting an item, and you have to make it to the end without losing your item. And luckily, the good thing about this is that if you die, you do have your progress, like, in between the level of your last completed task. So that's good. But this is a pretty forgettable game, in my opinion. It's short. You'll get through it no problem. In fact, if you know what you're doing, you can definitely speedrun this in maybe under an hour. But I felt like a game, like, compared to what I played, it's not really for me. Pocky and Rocky 2 for the Super Nintendo is a C. I wanted to like Pocky and Rocky 2 more. I know I say that phrase a lot, but it holds true, because I really enjoyed Pocky and Rocky 1. If you're playing the multiplayer in Pocky and Rocky 2, the second player is going to have a much more neutered experience. Pocky and Rocky 2 is definitely pretty tough. Like, way tougher than Pocky and Rocky 1. So if you're going to play this game, be prepared for a challenge. Alright, Power Blade 2 for the NES. I'm gonna give it a B as well. It's very short, it's your standard NES side-scrolling platformer fare. If you're able to, like, build up your weapon, you'll do really well against, like, later enemies. And I do like that you get different suits that will change how you approach levels. It gives you, like, some sense of puzzle solving, and the action is pretty intense. I wish I remembered more Power Blade 1 to say, like, which one I like more. But I would say Power Blade 2 is, like, you can't go wrong with either or game. Alright. Record of Lodoss War Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is a pretty fun Metroidvania. I'm gonna give it a B, because while it's a good Metroidvania, I don't know why I'm calling it Metroidvania, because I'm starting to hate that word now. Like an action adventure with exploration and, you know, maze-like mechanics, RPG mechanics, of course. It wasn't as good as Axiom Verge 2, but it definitely, like, hit the mark on a lot of things. Excuse me. Like, you're able to level up like you could in, say, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And I feel like the game was, like, loosely inspired by it. Of course, you had, like, one big area to explore, and you did get, like, certain power-ups that allow you to overcome certain obstacles, as well as, like, special spells that you can use to fight your way through a whole bunch of enemies. Not to mention getting a whole lot of different weaponry and armor. It makes it a lot of fun. And the good thing is, it just recently came out on consoles as well, so you don't just have to play it on PC. Alright, Rough Trigger, the Vanacore Conspiracy. It's an F. It's just, we have Ratchet and Clank at home, but what if our home was a crack house? That's how I feel about Rough Trigger, the Vanacore Conspiracy. It's just an absolute... It's very similar to Ratchet and Clank, except not good. Some parts of it were pretty hard, and other parts are, like, really annoying. And audio balancing for cutscenes was terrible. Like, you can just hear the music almost booming in your ears, and the voices are like... And Rough doesn't exactly have a lot of good one-liners at all. If you want a game like this, like Rough Trigger, just play Ratchet and Clank. You'll feel much better for it. Alright, Shadow the Ninja for the NES. I'm gonna give it a C. Like, it was a pretty short game. Like, I was able to finish it in one video, under an hour. Especially since I had to, like, split the part if certain levels just kick my ass. Mostly just for practicing them and then trying them out again, like, when I do better. This game will punish you if you get hit a lot in stages, because if you take damage, your weapons actually power down. So it can make things a little bit tougher for you. And you only have one life through each stage, but of course each stage is broken up into different parts, so you can continue from there. Boss battles can be pretty fun to get into. You will have to learn through patterns, or you are going to get destroyed. But I think this also has 2-player co-op, so again, if you got a friend, try it out. Shining Force for the Sega Genesis, I'm going to give an A. This was also requested in the 2020 Christmas special, and I guess, you know, Mega Man ZX was too. I forgot to mention that. And I know one friend's been suggesting this to me for years, and it never got picked until somebody else requested it, which is pretty funny. This is like a pretty fun tactical RPG for the Sega Genesis, so if you either played that or Shining Force 2, you can't really go wrong with either. Of course, you know, I did grind a little bit in some stages, and I did miss one character, but I really liked the story, and I really like the gameplay of, you know, scratching my head and figuring out how to approach certain battles. And I feel like I got through it just fine. Sonic Advance 2. Sonic Mania for the PC. As much as I say I'm not big on Sonic games, this one I really liked. I'm also going to give it an A. Because it was like your classic Sonic fare, 2D adventure, nice throwback to previous Sonic games from Sonic 1 to Sonic CD. But of course they had some quality of life improvements, such as, like multiple save files, which I guess other Sonic games had, like maybe Sonic 3 did. And, level select after you beat the game, so you can go grab the Chaos Emeralds that you missed through like your first run, then go back to the final boss, and then just go and get the extra ending, which is pretty cool. Keep in mind that does not happen with Knuckles though, so you can get Super Knuckles, but you don't get an extra final boss. At least that's what I learned. So if you're gonna play a Sonic game that's pretty fun, go with Sonic Mania, 100%. Super Bomberman 5. I'm gonna give it a D. I was contemplating giving it an F, but of course, like, the actual levels themselves in Super Bomberman 5 were not bad. The fundamental gameplay of Super Bomberman 5 is very similar to your standard Bomberman fare, which is done pretty well. It is, like, each world is like a throwback to previous Super Bomberman games from 1 to 4, and of course 5 is its own unique levels. The one thing I had some criticism about is that you would have to go through every stage just to be able to get the best ending. And sometimes you may not know exactly what path to take to get that in an optimal route. You might be going through certain stages more than once or even twice to figure out which one you're supposed to go through so you can have them all cleared. And the boss battles, they were the bane of my existence. I hated the bomber bosses. They were the absolute worst part of the game. The final boss, at least, was different, so I liked that. But the boss battles, oh, they really soured the experience for me. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, I'm gonna give it an S. Because it is like, a port of the Wii U version, but they had quite a lot of quality of life improvements. You can even play online, you don't have to worry about losing your star or stamp if you die in the middle of the stage. And of course it comes with Bowser's Fury, which is a pretty fun, 2-player experience. Well, it can be played up to 2 players. Like have your second player be Bowser Jr. Bowser's Fury is a bit short, so I feel like I wouldn't mind if it was a standalone game and just like expanded more worlds to it. Like if you sold that for like maybe 20 to 30 bucks, I wouldn't complain. $60, however, no, that's way above my price point. But yeah, I did like the gameplay of Mario 3D World, and I even got through Champion's Run too. It took me a lot of tries, but I did wind up doing it. Supernova for the Super Nintendo, which is basically a Darius game. I think it was also called Darius Force. I'm gonna give it a C. There's not a lot to talk about. It's your standard shoot 'em up. You're going against a lot of like big battleships that are designed like marine animals. If you played a Darius game, you probably played through all of them. And that's probably not the best Darius game you could play. I think it's Darius Gaiden. Alright, Taifu Wrath of the Tiger for the PS1 also came up in the Christmas special. I'm gonna give that one a C, because I felt the gameplay, especially the combat, gets kind of weird at times. And of course the controls for special moves, they were kind of frustrating. After a while, you will get used to them. Just try to remember to actually employ some of them during boss battles, or you're gonna get wrecked. The Da Vinci Code. Hard to believe this came up in the Christmas special as well, but I'm gonna give it a D. I really like the puzzles in Da Vinci Code, although I've had to look up a couple of them. Like one's in Chapter 3, and I think there was some in Chapter 7 or 8 as well. But overall, I really liked being able to solve these puzzles and being able to figure them out. I like that part of the game. The combat, however, left a lot to be desired. It was just an absolute mess. I felt like if the Da Vinci Code was just all puzzles, I would have liked it better. Otherwise, the combat just brought it down for me. Uncharted Drake's Fortune. I did the off the HD collection off the PS4, and I would give this a B. I really like the combat, or like the gameplay style in Uncharted. The combat was like a little tricky for me to get around and trying to employ the best strategies against certain enemies and finding the best cover to use against them. But after a while, I just got through it fine. The story was pretty intense too, and there were some QTEs, but they're not absolutely atrocious. Like some games can throw in QTEs up the wazoo. This one was kind of reserved. Alright, Virtual Boy Wario Land was pretty short, but pretty fun, so I'm gonna give it a B. If there was like any Virtual Boy game you could play, I'd recommend this one. There weren't a lot that were made. I think all of them were made in 1 year. So this one would definitely be the one you'd want to play, because it is a pretty fun side-scrolling platformer. If you play Wario Land games, especially Wario Land 1, you'll be familiar with this one, no problem. And if you beat the game, you can play it again in a harder difficulty if you felt it was too easy. Which is pretty cool that you can do that. Willow for the NES. I'm gonna give it... I'm gonna give it a C. I feel bad for giving it a C because it is a fun, like, Zelda-like game. So I would recommend it, but obviously there's gonna be some parts that can be absolutely frustrating. Like, certain dungeons and boss battles will absolutely ruin you. And if you're dealing with zombies, be very careful when you're fighting them. Because if you get transformed, you're in for a world of hurt. And I do feel like it could have benefited if you just had a map. So, you know, like, it's a good Zelda game, but I would much prefer to play Zelda if I had to choose. Wrath of the Black Manta for the NES. It's an okay game, but the reason why I'm giving it a D is because the gameplay was also pretty bland. Like, you're just going into rooms, you're rescuing kids, then you go fight a boss, and you get to use certain ninja abilities, which are pretty cool, but it just felt like the levels are very samey. You jump, you shoot, sometimes you use a ninja art, you go in a room, find enemies, maybe you get health, maybe you rescue a kid, then you go keep going, and then you go into a room, and then you do the same thing, then you fight a boss, and then you select your ninja arts, which I did like it offered you some flexibility, but just going throughout the stages, it felt kind of dull. Maybe the Japanese version is a little bit better, because I think they redesigned certain things. What was it called? Ninja Cop Saizio? I don't know if I'm saying it right. But I'd say if I ever play this again, I might try the Japanese version. See what the difference is. Yoshi's Island DS. This game was an absolute ass amount of frustration. But I'm gonna give it a D. A lot of you probably thought I was gonna give this game an F. I thought the levels themselves were designed well. Except for a few, which, you know, the special levels can absolutely eat my ass. But I felt like if this game was, like, say, on the Wii U or on a home console where they didn't have to deal with screen crunch, it could have been a much better experience. But that's just me. I felt like having to play on a small screen, as well as using your second screen, which has a little gap in between, it made measuring some angles challenging. This should have been, like, on one screen and on a console rather than a handheld. It would have done so much better. And the music, I wasn't a fan of the music. The original stuff on the SNES, hell, even Yoshi's Story had better music too. This just felt kind of bland. And Yoshi's Island for the 3DS is actually worse. Believe it or not. So if you had to choose between Yoshi's Island, New Yoshi's Island for the 3DS, and Yoshi's Island DS, that would be the order I would pick it. Now, you know what? I'll put Yoshi's Story in second place as well. Alright, last but not least. How long have I been going? I don't even have my timer there. Like, OBS is minimized. Young Merlin for the Super Nintendo. And I'm gonna give it... I'm gonna give it a C. Young Merlin is also a game that would have done a little bit better on PC than on Super Nintendo. But I think it did a little bit better as a console game than Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse and the GameCube did. I don't think this is on any other console, by the way, which is kind of weird. You'd think it'd be on the Genesis or even the Amiga. This game was not bad. The minecart sections were terrible. The rematch with the Slime Boss was abysmal. And sometimes going like back and forth through the same areas repeatedly. Especially if you get a gem, you have to go back to the same lake, then you have to go back to where you was. That was abysmal. But outside of that, like actually doing gameplay in the area you're currently in, it's not bad. It's pretty decent. The story is a little weird because there's like no voice acting or anything except for random Banjo-Kazooie noises, and there's no text. So you have to like really pay attention to what's happening in the cutscenes to get an idea of what the story is. But overall, like, I felt like the game was not terrible. In fact, I wouldn't even say it was bad. But if you were to, like, redo this game, take out the minecart sections. Or at least make it so that it's easier to know what the hazard's gonna be. I think the screen was a little bit too zoomed in for dealing with the minecart sections. That's why I've been doing so bad in them. So there you go. That is my comprehensive Let's Plays of 2021 list completed. And if I were to give like one final thought, I look forward to doing like more playthroughs for you in 2022. It may not be 50. If it's even like 20 or 15, I would be happy. So if I were to look at this list, I would, in terms of like how I would rank them, I would say Bloodborne was a little bit better than Axiom Verge 2. Doom was a little bit better. And I would probably put Sonic Mania above Cuphead and Shining Force above Mega Man Legends 2. As for like the B games, Ape Escape 2 and Ape Escape 1 would definitely be above all this. And what else would I put there? I would probably say Record of Lodos 4 would be up there. Do-Re-Mi Fantasy was slightly better than Alicia Dragoon. Wario Land was a little bit better. Actually, you know what? Uncharted was probably better than a lot of these. Final Fantasy X-2... it's kind of okay where it is. Actually, I'm going to put that back down. Or maybe around here is good. I think that's pretty decent. I did like Magical Poppin' more than I like Bionic Commando. Just by a small smidgen. And I kind of like Mega Man Network Transmission more than Mario 6 Christmas. Alright, as for C's, what did I like more in particular order? Darksiders was better than Atelier Iris. In fact, I would say MC Kids was slightly better. What else? Willow was actually second place. I'm gonna give Willow second place. And then maybe ZX above Dual Hearts. And let's see, what else do I need to change? Is this good? No, I think the C's are good. As for the D's, I would say Pink Panther Pink Dog Pursuit would be a little bit better than Barbie Explorer. Rather, the Black Manta and the Da Vinci Code were slightly higher. Barbie Explorer actually was not a terrible D game. And I would say Super Bomberman 5 is more enjoyable than Phantasy Star 3 and Yoshi's on DS. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put Captain America in there right there. That's the NES one. And as for the F games, I think I like Rough Trigger the most out of these 5 games. And Hyper Dimension, Neptunia can go over there. Mickey Mouse can go all the way there in the back. And Earthworm Jim can go right there. So there you have it. that is my undisputed list for 2021. I look forward to doing something like this again in 2022. But for now, this is the Banga signing off, saying goodbye, Godspeed, Happy New Year. See you all in 2022.